I want to welcome everybody to the Daily Cheat Sheet here with the dude. Golan will hopefully be joining us in a few seconds. I got a request from somebody on Truth to cut down the cursing a little bit, so we will do that. We will cut down the cursing. I think you're completely right. I think we don't need to curse. I think it takes away, we're smart enough to work around the curse. So noted. And again, I want to thank everybody that's been following us on Truth, everywhere else. And thank you for all the love. Man, Steven Crowder, who I love Steven Crowder. And he said yesterday, Tucker Carlson slammed Ted Cruz for not knowing the population of Iran. Fine. But Tucker Carlson also let a Hamas apologist go completely unchecked through her propaganda ramblings. Why? And good for Crowder for being an honest broker in this business. I think he's one of the few honest brokers in this business. So good for him.
Yeah, I don't know much about Steven Crowder. I think I've seen some clips of his. They look good, but I did see the one you were talking about because Ted Cruz put one out too, where he goes, why is Tucker obsessed with Israel? And then there's a clip of Tucker going, I'm not obsessed with Israel, his weird laugh. But then they go through just Israel, Israel, Israel. Everyone just mentioning Israel on his show. And it is a nonstop just parade of guests and Israel. They're Christians. I mean, if you really care about Christianity, Christians are being slaughtered all over Africa, all over the Middle East. The only place that Christians are thriving is actually in Israel. The only people that you will get that will say differently, because the stats show it, the population is growing. It's the only country in the Middle East where the Christian population has grown since 1948 when Israel became a state. Everywhere else, every single other Middle Eastern country, the Christian population, as well as many other minorities, have plummeted. They either convert by the sword or they have to flee. And then there's also a third option, which Muslims love, which is jizya. So they make you pay a tax if you are an infidel. And actually, during the caliphate, the last caliphate, they preferred people to pay the tax than they did to have them convert, because that was a great revenue source. You have these captured people, they must pay you. It helps fund the organization. So what is today's modern jizya? What's the modern tax? Well, if you're in the West Bank, what they call the West Bank, which is Judea and Samaria, and you're a so-called Christian, you better be touting, or in Gaza, if you're in Gaza as well, same thing, you better be touting the Hamas line. If you don't, you will be dead. So when they get on TV and they get on anywhere and they start giving these reports, what do you think they're going to say? We see it. This troll that it's George Stephanopoulos' sister, she got on with Tucker Carlson with her mustache and just spewing lies. That's what you're seeing. That's how it comes to be.
Well done, and welcome, Golan. In case you just missed what we were just talking about quickly, I was talking about Steven Crowder coming out yesterday and talking about Tucker Carlson.
Crowder came out against Tucker. He's like, why is he obsessed with Israel, basically? He highlighted Tucker versus Ted Cruz, and then Tucker versus Stephanopoulos' sister, the so-called nun from Gaza.
Is that really, are you kidding? Is that really Stephanopoulos' sister?
Yeah.
Ooh.
You know, this is the third show in a row, by the way, where it's been like, is this guy related to, hey, the guy who did Oculus Rift? Is that someone's cousin? Gavin Newsom is Nancy Pelosi's cousin. This is the third time. Wow. All right. This is interesting. So maybe there really is a cabal. Are they all Jews? No? Okay, never mind. So interesting. I didn't realize that Crowder came out and said this. There was a time that I really enjoyed Crowder. I felt like he had a couple of missteps that kind of made me stop listening to his show, frankly. And I didn't love the way he went about the thing with the Daily Wire. So I kind of was like, you know what? I'm not going to get involved. I'm just going to put it aside. But I saw him recently speak out about the woke right. I saw him recently speak out about how MAGA is being hijacked. I saw him recently speak out about a couple of things that I think dovetail directly into this, because the leader of that woke right, or what I call the Fourth Reich of the MAGA party, is Tucker Carlson. And so for him to speak up and say that takes some cojones. But he's absolutely right. I love that he's saying that, and you may have bought yourself a guy back on your podcast.
But Golan, the Daily Wire deal was Crowder getting screwed. And when you look at the offer they gave him, it was one of the most horrific offers I've ever seen, and I'm glad he did not sign, because just for people to understand, he was offered, right, supposedly $300 million, but it was contingent on clicks. It was like an incentive-laden type thing.
I agree with you. Terrible deal, especially for a guy that had the following that he had, especially for a guy that had the fan base built in. He's a meme, that one of the most popular memes out there, change my mind meme, all of that. He's very, very well known so for him to get a click-based offer, yeah, it was nonsense. But I didn't like the public way he went about it. I thought that was pretty underhanded. So for
I
me,
agree with that.
it left a bad taste in my mouth on both sides.
And there you are. And obviously, the biggest news of the day, and if anything happens, we will do a live Rumble show discussing it, go on. But it's obviously Trump going to Russia. It reminds me a lot of Rocky IV.
He's going to Alaska.
Going to Alaska. Thank you. Going to
So
Alaska.
meet with the Russians.
And to me, right. And it reminds me, I have that Rocky IV soundtrack going off in my head. And, Trump's, obviously threatening him with sanctions and all that stuff. But I don't get it. People on the left knocking him for trying this. You have Hillary Clinton coming out today saying if he actually brokers a peace deal, he should be nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. And I'm like, thanks, Hillary.
Wow. We talked about it a bit yesterday, so I don't want to reiterate all of that. But it's so ridiculous to me that anyone would look down upon the attempt to negotiate peace with a world leader who started a war. I went through a bunch of examples yesterday. I don't have to reiterate the whole thing, but what would Hillary Clinton have said when Reagan was like, hey, tear down that wall? And she's like, hey, don't talk to that guy. Like, I just don't understand the point of what they're trying to accomplish. Because even from a partisan perspective, you sound foolish. You sound like you're grasping at straws. So I don't even understand the strategy here.
Listen, I agree with you 100%. And men, my question to you is this. Obviously there's no real point right now in talking about it because we don't know what's going to happen if events occur during the day. Like I said, we'll do a Rumble show later on live. But with that being said, listen, all we could hope for is that a deal gets done. I mean, if you're not hoping for a deal to get done, this is like the Osama bin Laden thing when Obama took him, said take him out. I was rooting as an American that night or that day for what Obama did and for the SEAL team taking him out. And that same spirit should be offered here.
He's so far brokered, just off the top of my head, India and Pakistan cease fighting. There was one in the South China Sea with Thailand and Cambodia. There was the Armenia and Azerbaijan. I mean, the list goes on. Off the top of my head, he's got, I think it's about 7 ceasefires.
And you're not even counting all the people who were held hostage around the world for years and decades, in some cases, that he's suddenly pulled out
16,
and saved and brought back to America.
Today. 16
it's
today.
Unbelievable.
Just got released.
Not even counting that. I mean, you have a Muslim country, Pakistan, calling for Trump to get the Nobel Peace Prize because he brokered that ceasefire. And that was 2 nuclear-armed nations that were just ratcheting it up after some Islamic jihadis came into India, Kashmir, and slaughtered a whole bunch of people on an amusement park lawn or whatever it was. So, I mean, the guy's brokered so many deals. The fact that Obama got the Nobel Peace Prize 6 months into his term for doing nothing, for being born half black. Great. Okay. That's an accomplishment. Fantastic. Good for you. But for Trump not to get it, just based upon the things that he's already done, from the Abraham Accords to this second term and all the peace deals that he's done so far, I hope he could do the Russia peace deal. Like I said before, it's a win-win situation.
But by the way, that what Hillary Clinton actually said, she didn't say that she would nominate Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize if this happened. What she said was, I would do that only if the deal doesn't require Ukraine to cede any territory. Which is, I mean, what a catch-22, right? Because basically what you're saying is, hey, I want you to negotiate, but you have to get 100% of what you're going in to negotiate for. And so that means there's no give and take. There's no negotiation. You literally have to go in and say, this is what I want. If the guy doesn't say yes, sorry, you don't get a Nobel Peace Prize. What? I mean, that is nonsense.
Yeah, it's, the Ukrainian fiasco that we're seeing unfold, the Ukrainians now believe that they could demand that all the land, including the land that Russia took in 2016, be returned. And what's foolish about that is that they are overplaying their hand. The Europeans and the Democrats have convinced the Ukrainians that the world will be behind them no matter what. And that's just not the case. Nobody's going to continue funding this war. I mean, the Europeans might continue for a little bit, but there's going to come a point where they're going to turn to the Ukrainians. They're going to say, listen, you got to end this thing so that he doesn't invade the rest of Europe or whatever is going on there, or that more people don't die. Forget about him invading the rest of Europe. It might just be a continuation of a bloody war that just decimates the Ukrainian thing. And at the end of it, the Russians are going to gain that land anyway. So if you're looking at right and wrong,
Correct.
sure, Russia's wrong. But if you're looking at reality, is Ukraine going to get back that land? And they're not. That's not going to happen. And they talk about land swaps. Ukraine doesn't have any Russian land to swap. So it's not land swaps. It's basically freezing it along the battle lines as they are now and having some sort of agreement where it doesn't flare up. Is that ideal? No, it's not ideal. Ideal would be Russia gives back Ukraine all of their land. And you could talk about how Ukraine came into existence and all that other stuff at another time. But right now, that would be ideal, but that's not realistic. Realistic is freezing the battle lines as they are right now, ending the bloodshed.
But I go back to, from a political perspective, all those people who are, and I've seen them talking about how he's going to make a deal like Chamberlain and Hitler, just the most hyperbolic, ridiculous stuff you can imagine. Except aren't these the same people that were clapping their hands like seals when Obama was whispering in Medvedev's ear?
When Biden was asked what he would do if the Russians invade Ukraine, and he said, it depends how many soldiers they send in. It depends how deep they go, which was a green light. That gave them the green light to invade. When you say we have a red line, don't do it, you say, it depends how much you do it. That's a green light.
Listen, Biden gave 100 green lights. Obama gave 100 green lights by drawing red lines that were crossed over and over and over and over. Eventually, a red light turns green, right?
But the genius of what Trump is doing, and this is not being called out enough, is that everyone else is telling the Russians that we're going to back them. We're going to send our troops in. France said that they were going to send troops to Ukraine. I mean, they were talking about getting in direct conflict with Russia. What Trump is doing, he's saying, listen, we're not getting into this, but we're going to smash you economically. We are going to hurt you so badly. We're going to put massive sanctions on any country that buys oil for you. You're not going to be able to sell your oil anywhere. We're going to strangle your economy. And that is the way to do it. We're not looking to fight with you. We'd actually want to give you an off-ramp. Please stop this fight. Let us know what it'll take. Let's do it. Let's come to some sort of mutual agreement where you are not happy and the Ukrainians are not happy, but the fighting ends, and that's where it ends. Everyone else was talking about just fighting, which is idiotic.
Listen, I think you're 100% correct. Let's move on, though, because, when you do a daily show and you do it at a certain time, you're going to miss news stories. And so, there's quite a few stories from yesterday that we missed, but one of them is that I love is that Pam Bondi stripped power for Metro Police Chief Pamela Smith by naming Drug Enforcement Administrator Terry Cole as the department's emergency police commissioner. Just a brilliant movement. And this is while Bowser, the mayor, was headed to Martha's Vineyard. So it shows you how much she actually cares about her city. But just a brilliant move. Take away that power and do what you can do.
This is the same police chief that when the federal agents and National Guard were brought in to Washington, and a reporter asked her about the chain of command that has now changed. She said, what is that? She had no idea what chain of command is. This is a DEI hire. She's a moron. She shouldn't have had the job in the first place, and they should get rid of her. Look, if crime is out of control and you're in charge of controlling crime, you're not doing a good job. You lose your job. If this was corporate America, she'd be fired in a second. I don't know why we have a different standard when it comes to public officials than we would for corporate America. In public office, we see people fail upwards all the time. The worst of the worst make it to the top. And it's weird DEI-driven unions. Their unions fight and make sure that these people get just pushed upwards. The worst can't get fired. I've seen this again and again where You have different organizations that have a union, and there's an employee who just simply doesn't show up to work, but the corporation can't fire them. They need to keep them on payroll because the union threatens.
Well, look, I mean, look no further when with Doge and Trump trying to fire everybody. I mean, listen, who the hell knew the IRS had a union? I mean, what a wonky, weird thing for the IRS to actually have a union. But this is the battles that he's been facing. We're really witnessing the deep state versus Trump. Thank God that the Supreme Court is overturning and ruling in his favor on so many of these cases. But the common sense thing, man, you're talking about common sense. You shouldn't be falling upwards.
Yeah, no, you look at the way government was originally structured, where Congress people weren't even paid a salary, it was a stipend. They did not want that to be your main job. Your main job should have been your main job. And then you should go to Congress to represent the people because you care and you get paid, you get compensated for that time. What's been flipped is that the government now believes that they own everything and that the people are the subjects. So it's no more public servants. Now it's the public are the servants, and these people are the oligarchs. They're the the master class ruling over everybody, and it's really flipped. And you see it with the financial corruption, especially from USAID and all these left-leaning organizations that got billions of dollars. Save C. Abrams nonprofit, which had $100 in the bank account and was just formed a few months before that, with an idea of replacing people's stoves in Georgia, got $1 billion. The Biden administration gave them $1 billion. That is insane. That is not justice. That is not fair. That is just not right. The government bloat, when what they're doing by deflating the government bloat right now is absolutely what needs to happen. If you wanted to see this country go downhill and actually implode, we would have continued down the Democrat-led path of bigger government, more censorship, more sanctions on everybody, more control by the government, not even of your own kids. In California, they keep on passing laws that are anti-parent. I think now anyone could show up at a school and demand to take your kid out. This just passed. I just read about this last week. And they are not required to present ID. So, pedophile wants to show up and check a kid out of school, and they're not required to contact the parent. I mean, none of this makes sense.
Well, listen, we're talking about obviously nothing making sense, right? So even in the state of California that we're in, and listen, if anybody is falling for Gavin Newsom, they have to be out of their minds.
It's hilarious watching him go against this redistricting thing
Yeah,
when California is already gerrymandered to the max. So this is the thing. All of the Democrat states are already gerrymandered to the max. You look at a lot.
well, we
when
might lose
talking
4
about this.
seats. That's the problem with this. With his new gerrymandering, Republicans can actually lose 4 seats. For perspective for people, they understand this. There are 52 seats from California. We only have 9. If we lose 4, that means we have 5 seats out of 52 in a state where 4 million voters voted Republican. And I would call, if this actually even comes close, I would have President Trump should immediately call for a census of California. At that moment, call for an immediate census, because we know the amounts of illegal immigration, and like you brought up, that it's illegal to show your ID when voting.
So the Democrats have been doing this for a long time, and what you're seeing now is the Republicans starting to take a page out of the Democratic playbook, and the Democrats are going nuts. They're losing their minds over it. So they might pick up 4 in Texas, but they also might pick up more, because if California does what it's threatening to do by take away more seats from Republicans, then you're going to see Ohio get into the mix, and they're going to redistrict. You're going to see a lot of other states do it. And Texas, I think, has an additional 3 or 4 that they could pick up if they really wanted to do egregious gerrymandering. And then people who say that there's a bipartisan committee that does the gerrymandering in every state, let me tell you something. That is not accurate. If it was a bipartisan committee, there would be no gerrymandering. It would be deadlocked, because one side would not allow the other side to pick up all these seats the way the Democrats have been doing over the past umpteen years. So these independent, nonpartisan, blah, it's all BS. It's made up. They have been doing it for a long time, and now they're getting mad that the Republicans are copying their playbook.
Wilson, brilliantly said. And I don't know if you saw this story, and this is a really important story because this is really what started to shift the tide as far as DEI and woke and all of this other stuff was Loudoun County in Virginia and Glenn Youngkin getting the governorship. And you would have thought, oh, wow, this is resolved, man. This is like totally resolved in Loudoun County. And we know many of the people that helped fight what happened in Loudoun County. But it's up again, and 6-3 vote about having same-sex bathrooms in schools. Forget about not getting the message. We're talking about sexual abuse that occurred many times in Loudoun County that the school board covered up. And they framed the father that was at one of the school board meetings as just an interrupter, as just trying to interrupt this thing when his kid was directly affected by this same-sex bathroom crap. And it's still 6-3. So you know what? I pray the people of Virginia are smart enough again and make enough noise in Loudoun County to get another Republican, because it's the one state where you only have one term as governor. And I pray that they get the messaging. But if they don't and they go back and vote Democrat, get the hell out of Loudoun County if you're a Republican. Go to different school districts, go to charter schools, pull your kids out of the public school system. This is an absolute disgrace. I don't understand this concept. I can't even recommend in my wildest dreams. You're a parent. The idea of there being gender neutral or whatever type bathrooms for your kids at school is insane.
So a couple of things there. One is this happened in a school bathroom with a self-identifying trans boy who identifies as a girl, was in the girls' bathroom, and he sexually assaulted girls. And where it becomes really egregious is that he had done this before, and they transferred him to another school, and he did it again. So instead of protecting the kids, they're protecting this predator. And instead of listening to the parent of a child that was assaulted, they branded him a right-wing disruptor or whatever, and they had him arrested. It's topsy-turvy. I don't know how that guy kept it together. But it's also worth pointing out something that Dr. Seth brought up. And he was like, listen, on the show yesterday, you said that these elected officials want your kids, and I was kind of giggling about it, they want your kids to walk to school and walk past drug addicts and criminals and all kinds of despicable people that are just allowed to be on the streets. And you see that here, especially on Skid Row, downtown LA. And he goes, man, you made a mistake. He's like, they don't want their kids to do that. They want your kids to do that. Gavin Newsom's kids go to private school. Obama, who rejected school choice program, sent his kids to private school. These people don't send their kids to the schools where they're exposed to all this nonsense. They send their kids to the cushy private security schools where everything is safe and protected, but your kids should be subjected to all this stuff. And that is such a good point. Good enough for thee, but not for me. Like, they want you to do that. They want you to live in bad neighborhoods. They want to defund the police in your neighborhood, but not where they live. Where they live, it's all private security and gated complexes. But where you live, oh, you should just have a social worker show up when there's a madman with a machete hacking your spouse to pieces.
Right, but it's the same exact concept you just brought up of demasculating police officers, right? And it showing up at a potential crime scene of abuse with a social worker. Are you out of your damn mind? What the police have to go through on a daily basis in our country, they're heroes. Every time they show up somewhere, they have no idea what's going to happen. And the things they see, nobody should have to see mend. And showing up with a social worker for a domestic abuse call is totally insane. Just the idea of that is insanity.
The vast majority of the police officers in this country are absolute heroes. There's a small handful of dirty cops. I've experienced dirty cops when I was growing up. It was just a fact of life. You knew it was there. The social worker program, what they're talking about and what they want to do, what these people believe, again, we've said this before, they don't understand cause and effect. You commit a crime, you're going to go to jail. What these people are doing is they're looking at jails and they're saying, wow, there's so many black people, or there's so many these people, or so many those people in jail. It must be abolished and just torn down. Not taking into account how that happened, how you got there, and the communities that are primarily affected by these rampant crime. And it's usually inner city. You look at Chicago, it's mostly black on black crime. Again, I've said this, if I was a mother in Chicago or father in Chicago, I would want more police to protect my kid. If my kid was not a gangbanging murderer, I would want more police. If my kid was a gangbanging murderer, then maybe I wouldn't want more police. So which side of the aisle are you on when it comes to sending social workers? I think sending social workers is probably not a bad idea.
No,
But
no,
what you do is
after.
you complement it to your
Yeah.
existing police force. You say, okay, we have a psychopath that's locked in a bathroom and he's threatening to kill his grandmother. All right, let's send a team of SWAT and a social worker. Maybe the social worker could advise the SWAT team on how best to emotionally talk to this guy. But what these idiots want to do is they want to get rid of all the cops and just have social workers go there. That is just a recipe for disaster. You're going to get a lot of social workers killed, for starters.
You're 100% correct. And this goes back to, even the people that came over and voted for Trump this time, especially a lot of the Bernie bros, logic really passed them over. I mean, we're glad we won the election with some of their help, but the problem is sometimes when you cross over and start voting for somebody else, you don't grasp that concept of risk and reward.
The other main thing that they don't get is if you base things on truth and reality, you're going to come to a certain set of conclusions, which is where we arrive. If you base things on ideology, which is like, what does my group say? What are we supposed to think right now about Trump and Putin going to do the thing? Oh, he's a Russian asset and he's terrible. So everything he does has to be terrible. That's not based in reality. That's based on ideology, right? So if the people that we're talking about would base things on abject reality, you look at the situation and then come to your conclusion, regardless who the person is. So if this was Obama or Biden going to meet Putin, I'd have the exact same take on it. It's a good thing. Sit down, try to end this thing, regardless of who the person is. What you're seeing with the ideologically driven people is that they change the exact same scenario based on who it is. So if it's a Trump guy, it's terrible, it's doom and gloom, and we're losing our democracy. And if it's Biden, no matter what he does, it's all fantastic. No, his son loves crackhead hookers, and that's why he's with them. He's helping them. Like all of that nonsense.
No, listen, I think you're 100% correct. And what I was referring to, though, with the people that are coming into the party now, the new people that came into the party, you have people like Joe Rogan constantly criticizing ICE go on. And, he's like, oh, I didn't think they were going to go after the landscapers or this or that. And they're not going after yes. Are people going to get caught up in this? 100%. What did you think was going to happen? They were going to like a selectively do a round. It's an impossibility to do this. And again, people are here illegally. Like that's the most important messaging that should happen. And for the most part, go on. They're capturing criminals. Are people getting ensnared in that? Yes. Do they have to go back to the back of the line and try to come here legally? That's 100% what they should be doing. But I'm sick and tired of Joe Rogan. I mean, this is where he cannot critically think.
Let me just jump in there a sec, because yes, you're right. But the one thing he is not doing is the cause and effect. It's the exact same thing. Had these sanctuary cities opened up their jails and let ICE come in and get the bad guys from the jails, they would not be running around the city grabbing any illegal, which includes the gardeners and the whatever guys. So he's not doing that. And Joe Rogan has this weird soft spot for demented liberals. He does. He voted for Bernie. He thinks Crystal and Sagar have a great show.
It's not a soft spot, but I want to get to go on. It's not a soft spot. Listen.
I agree. It's not. He's a liberal. I mean, let's not mince words. He is a liberal. The fact that I remember all the memes, and it was Tulsi Gabbard and Joe Rogan and Kennedy and Trump all doing some kind of dance together as if this was the dream team, because he had him on the podcast, and then Kamala didn't go on the podcast, and then he endorsed him. He endorsed him because he went on the podcast and they had a nice conversation. And compared to Kamala, who didn't go on at all, that's Joe Rogan's benchmark. He endorsed him, but for everyone to suddenly pretend that he became a MAGA figure, for everyone to suddenly pretend like he was suddenly part of the coalition is ridiculous. He never was. He never has been. He's always been a Bernie bro. He remains a Bernie bro. Just watch what he did with Douglas Murray to understand what side of the aisle that he's on. He's not on the woke right. He's on the woke left. Okay. And here, yes, you're absolutely right, man. He's talking about all these issues and not thinking about the cause and effect. It's not, first of all, the rule is illegal, not illegal unless you mow lawns or unless I like you or unless you're a grandmother. It's illegal. Now, one of the things that Trump did very smartly was say, we're going to specifically try to target people who have criminal records because the idea is to take out the people who are going to hurt our country. But as men mentioned, if all the quote unquote sanctuary cities decide we're not going to cooperate, we're not going to point you in the direction of our prisoners, we're not going to let you into the jails to take the people who have already been arrested. Here they are in a cell. We're not going to let you do that. So now we have to wait until we do a dragnet. Well, if we do a dragnet, then it's on you that whoever we caught, and some of those people happen to be your neighbors. That's not Trump's fault. And to pretend like it is to ignore reality and cause and effect, as men said.
I'm going to take issue with one thing. I don't think he voted for Trump because he was on his show. I think
No, that's not what I said. I didn't say because he was
Okay.
on his show. I said compared to Kamala, first of all, Trump is the better choice. Second of all, and Rogan, it does matter to Rogan, the conversations that he has on his show or how he makes his decisions. At least that's how he presents himself. So if he allows a guy on the show and he has a great long form conversation with no edits, and it was a great conversation, it was, I watched the whole thing. And then the other person isn't even willing to come on without a bunch of caveats and everything else. He's like, don't trust you, makes a decision. So it wasn't just because he was on that show.
I think it was that in combination with some really smart people like Dana White explaining to Joe how close we were to falling off the cliff under an authoritarian regime that was silencing Americans, that was funneling money to all kinds of nefarious actors and organizations, that was corrupt to the core, that was incompetent, absolutely incompetent when it came to everything from foreign policy to domestic policy to racial issues, everything. They were absolutely incompetent. So I think all of those things, together with the fact that she couldn't hold a 3-hour conversation, you got to take those vodka breaks in between, and she talks in circles. All of that convinced him to go for Trump, but I don't think he's a Trump bro at all.
He is a Bernie bro through and through. He is still a Bernie bro today, by the way. Did you watch his interview with Bernie?
Yeah.
Man, I had to stomach that thing.
I watched clips.
Yeah, exactly.
To be honest with you.
I sat through because I knew we were going to talk about it at some point, or I thought we would. And when he is talking to Bernie, he is still 100% in on Bernie. When he's talking to Trump, he's just having a conversation with a guy he can have a beer with, and they can talk fights and stuff. But the Bernie thing, he's ideologically aligned with.
I also think and listen, I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't think Joe Rogan's one of the brightest people in the world. And
I disagree. I think he's very bright, and he's also very curious, which is what makes his show
just
really
because
good.
You're curious, again, doesn't mean you're bright. And oftentimes, I will quote Douglas Murray on this: when you ask enough questions, you're not asking questions, and it's not curiosity. You're making a statement. But the point I was going to make, we could disagree with this. That's fine. That wasn't where I was going. Joe Rogan is under assault from a lot of different angles right now. From obviously people on the right, he's under assault from people on the left. I don't think he got into this goal on necessarily realizing the consequences of what his actions were. And he's trying to pull a Howard Stern right now. Because Joe Rogan is a media empire. Okay, Joe Rogan is, as we've brought up, his own media. And he's trying to backtrack a lot right now and make it sort of Howard Sterny, where, hey, I still want to be invited to all the parties.
I actually don't agree with men, and I don't agree with you. I don't think that he thinks that far ahead. I think you're giving him too much credit. I think this is a guy who got hundreds of millions of dollars to sit around and talk nonsense with a bunch of people, some of whom actually have something to say, some of whom have nothing to say. But the conversations that he has are mostly ideological whiplash. He'll have a conversation with someone on one side of an equation and nod along with it, and then have a conversation with someone on the other side of the equation and nod along with it, not realizing that you just nodded to two totally different things that cannot exist at the same time. So he's open-minded, but open-minded, people confuse that with being well-informed. He's great at listening. He asks great questions. He also is a stoner who halfway through will be like, I don't know, man. And then he'll start talking about bow hunting. So I think he's just a guy who doesn't care. He wanted to build a club where he had freedom so his friends could make jokes. He wanted to live in a place where he didn't have to be under lock and key based on every word that he said, especially after that whole thing happened where they released the video, the supercut of him saying the N-word, all of that. I just think he has money, he doesn't care, and he doesn't want to be involved with anything else. And that's the end of the story.
Okay, man, final thoughts.
I think he's smart. I think he is curious. And I also think he's a liberal. And he's a liberal because of a number of reasons. I think he always was a liberal, but also when they were younger, they were on federal food stamp program. They were getting subsistence from the government, and he understands why that's important. I believe it's important too, but I also think there's a lot of people abusing the system. And then there's the fact that he wants to come across as a good person. And a lot of people believe that the Democrats, the liberals, are better people, and he wants to view himself as a good person. And I think that's where it stems from.
Okay, let me just say to close this out, you brought up two contradicting thoughts at the same time, and that's using the word liberal and curious. Okay, the one thing about being a liberal, it absolutely lacks any curiosity.
Well, I explained why I think
I
he's
understand.
I
I'm
think
just
he
saying.
wants to think of himself as a good human being, and a lot of well-intentioned people out there identify as liberal because they think that's the team that is compassionate and they're caring and they loving, and the Republicans are mean.
But
So
I
a lot
think both of
people
those
like
things can exist
self-identify.
simultaneously, man. I think that a lot of those people think, I am the good person. I'm the compassionate one. So now, Lords on high, tell me what I should believe in order to fit into that category of being a good, compassionate person. And they go, okay, cut off your son's penis.
Okay, I got to
And they go,
disagree
here's the
with
next
both of
thing and the
you.
next thing.
I got to disagree with both of you and just say this. I think it's just easier. Okay? It's just if you live in certain places, it's swimming with the sheep, it's going with the current. It's a lot easier to just go with the flow and say, "Yeah, I agree with that." And you don't want to cause ruffles, you don't want to make waves. So you everything with reproductive rights to every single thing, it's a lot easier being the person that capitulates than being the person that stands up and says, what the hell are you talking about? Because you will never get invited back.
I think some
I could
people
give
fit
you
into that category, but I just have anecdotal evidence in my own life. I know plenty of people who are actually trying their hardest to be good people. And the way they see the path to do that is by being a liberal and by doing whatever it is, whatever doctrine is handed down by the liberal Mount Olympus.
But that's my
And then they
point.
just do it.
That's
Right.
my point. They're going with what's being handed down and not being curious as to what's being handed down.
Let me give you an example. I'm going to give you an example. I could see Joe Rogan taking the stance that dropping the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki was terrible, the wrong thing. It was mean. We shouldn't have done it. And as being compassionate would have been not to drop the bomb. And I would take the stance that saying dropping the bomb was what was being compassionate. Those people were not backing down. They did not want to end the war. They were going to fight to the last kamikaze, and dropping those bombs on them saved countless of lives. Right there, that example is, you could apply that to almost any stance that the liberals versus the conservatives take. You want to take tough on crime. They think it's nice and compassionate to be soft on crime. I think it's compassionate to be tough on crime, to protect the sheep from getting eaten by the wolves. They think it's compassionate to protect the wolves. Over and over again.
Right,
This
so
is
that's
the same
my
exact
point.
Stance.
But that's your first of all. Ben Stein was discussing this the other night. You could pretty much say that 1 million Americans were saved by dropping those bombs. At least 1 million American lives were saved. So again, I will say this. It's a lot easier being them than it is us on a daily basis. It's definitely hurt our lives in many ways. It's hurt our finances in many ways, our social lives in many ways. So you know what? I'm not going to give them the leeway of saying that they think there's something nice in what they're doing. I'm simply going to say it's a lot easier for them and expedient for them, socially wise, romantically wise, financial wise, just to do it. So I mean, go on. Final thoughts on
I
that.
want to say one thing about this. So I think about this in a more pragmatic way, like a Freakonomics kind of way. If you ever read Freakonomics, the idea of being able to see what's happening today, but also being able to see what the butterfly effect might occur as a result in the future. And I think that a lot of liberals look at today, but don't look at the future. So they say, what would be nice to do to this person today? And they don't, like letting the criminal out of prison early. Oh, it's nice. This person will get out of prison early. That is a nice thing today, and I'm a nice person. And they don't think about what happens next week or next month or 20 years from now. If you're not familiar with Freakonomics, my favorite example of this was there was a crime drop in the 90s. Everyone thought, oh, policing, stronger economy, tougher sentencing. But when you look back, in the 1970s, the legalization of abortion meant that less children were growing up in disadvantaged high crime environments. And as a result, less criminals existed 20 years later. That's what Freakonomics is. I think the idea of looking at what's happening now versus the consequences of it, to me, is what a lot of these people look at.
I just think
remember that one.
I just
remember
think we're
that.
being way too kind to how they view things, because they do not view us with that same kindness and generosity that you are offering them. Now, and that's the thing that Trump does constantly, is he's challenging their belief systems. He's constantly challenging them, man. But I just have to get back to this. I think this is really important to bring up, because we brought up the governor's race in Virginia, and they passed what is called, I want to be specific with this, but they're continuing to support the policy, which is policy 8040, which provides protections to transgender students. And the governor that's running is the lieutenant governor. She's black, and her name is, she's also a former, served in one of the branches of the military. Her name is Winsome Earle-Sears. And I think everybody that's listening to the show should contribute to her campaign if you can, even if it's not with money, by getting on the ground and trying to figure out a way to get her in, because this is, as they say, for a place like Virginia, and this is absolute insanity, man.
I happen to really like her. I don't think she's bombastic or present enough. You not to compare her to these people, but like a Jasmine Crockett is on TV all the time and just ranting and railing about everything. Winston is not doing any of that stuff. She's very subdued. She's smart. She's articulate. She could be a great governor. I just wish that there were more battle-hardened people in her camp that could get out there and get her message out.
Well, that's why I'm saying for people to do this, because that's the whole point in social media or in any of this stuff go on, is that we could say the citizen soldiers or the citizen voting, the electoral citizen soldiers that could get out there and help her with this job. Because as we discussed earlier, this is just so dangerous that they're keeping this legislation, even under the threat of losing $50 million in funding. Loudoun County is one of the richest counties in America. So the $50 million won't hurt them. But what will hurt them and the children is this policy. So we got to get her in.
Look, I happen to be a big fan. I love her whole backstory. I think that this is the kind of person that everybody should be supporting. And frankly, if the other side of the aisle was being honest with themselves, as we talked about a moment ago, they would be supporting her. She feels like everything you want someone in a candidate to be, everything from being an immigrant to being a black woman to everything else, all of that, in addition to the fact that this legislation needs to pass. To me, it's a no-brainer.
In an ideal world, she would be held up as an example for little girls to say, hey, anything's possible.
That's what I'm saying.
She's so, she's smart. She's poised. Poised was the word I was looking for. She's very poised. But instead you have a hood rat like Jasmine Crockett. She's out there getting all the attention. The media is propping that one up. And here you have someone who would make a great role model. And no, she's getting none of that. They're just smearing her as like, the black face of white supremacy, or whatever the latest version of
It's the
that is
same.
for
They've
her.
done this over and over again. By the way, talk about racist. The most ridiculous kind of accusations. I've literally heard them say, this black person's a white supremacist, and my hair blows back. I don't even understand how they pull that off without realizing that they have tipped over into the most villainous kind of rhetoric you could imagine.
Because it's what I brought up to you before. This is the through line through liberalism. It's absolute lack of curiosity. It's lack of honesty. It's lack of integrity. Okay? It's disgusting. We've witnessed this through the past 30 years. Anytime there is a black leader that's a conservative, that's well-spoken, that's smart, they smear them with the blackface. They did it with Larry Elder. They did it with Roy Innes in New York. They did it with his son Niger Innes in New York. They've done this countless times. If you're black and you're successful and you're conservative, you're an Uncle Tom. It's disgusting. It is absolutely disgusting.
I just want to clarify one thing. I think the proper term when they call her would be she's a black white supremacist. And I think
It's just the craziest.
that's
By the way, the other thing about it is too, what is the controversy right now? She's talking about education. That's a black woman immigrant who came here with $1.50 in her pocket and progressed to this point and everything else is talking about let's educate our kids. And they're like white supremacist. It's the nuttiest thing I've ever seen. And of course, she's not saying I want to defund public schools. She's saying I want to fund the students. I want to give them an education without government forcing them to do specific things or learn specific things that we don't agree with. And it's not about saying I want to break down the system. She wants to improve and expand upon the system. And competition works. If private schools have to earn your trust and public schools have to compete to keep you, everybody gets better. So I really don't see how this is negative for anybody, except maybe the teachers' unions and some of the things that the liberals love to pretend is not part of their coalition.
There's an important game that people play, and that is every time Democrats say a threat to our democracy, take democracy and replace it with our power. So it's a threat to our power. And it's the same thing here. They don't want school choice because it's a threat to their power for a number of reasons. One is they won't be able to indoctrinate your kids, but two, the school unions, the teachers union, donate so much money to the Democratic Party. It's a scheme where they fund the schools, they give them everything they want as far as trans in the girls' locker rooms and as far as funding, whatever it is.
Forget that. Keeping the kids home during COVID, letting everyone teach from home, all of that stuff. Yep. That all was just a gift as a thank you, and now give us our money back. That's all.
Yep, exactly.
And it's just I want to finish this up by this topic by saying, again, it's I went against Republicans for a long time for being lazy, really just being sloppy and lazy. And Trump has really risen the party up from the ashes, and it made us look at the world differently, made us look at domestic policy, foreign policy, and the Democrats now are living in the past. They're bores. But if this wasn't such a dangerous thing that they're playing with, it wouldn't matter, go on. This wouldn't matter. But when you're talking about school safety of children in a school for a bathroom, you've completely lost all sense of. I mean, just go to what Trump is doing in D.C. as we've brought up, getting criminals off the street. What could possibly be your argument with that? What could possibly be your argument for allowing, for the most part, inner city black children and mothers to be safe?
To me, keeping our children safe, protecting children is literally the most basic job of government. At its base level, if you can't guarantee that kids are safe, and I mean in school, and that means when there are teachers that are trying to do drag shows for them or trying to keep the gender secrets or whatever it happens to be, all of that, whether it's online, whether it's on their way home, whether it's at home, you've already failed the Civilization 101 if you have failed at that. And I know the left likes to shout overreach when we push for school security, for instance, or background checks for teachers, or even keeping sexually explicit books out of the libraries, which I can't believe I just said that out loud. Like that's a thing they advocate for. But no, This is called parenting. This is called taking care of our children. This is called what government is for. And I cannot imagine a way to lose your base or voters in general faster than to say, we're going to make sure your kids get all the wrong lessons and are not safe anywhere they go.
100% correct and extremely well said. I just want to end this on the view that I hate even saying people's names, to be honest, because I don't want to legitimize people. But one of these numbnuts idiots from the View, Trump is having the Kennedy Center honors, and he wants to, and he's obviously rebuilding the building, and he wants to bring it back to normalcy. That's all Trump is trying to do, by the way. Trump is not trying to say, I'm only having Republican I'm only nominating Republic. I don't think they even know what Gloria Gaynor's stance on politics are. She's a black woman that was extremely famous, that's had one of the most successful music careers go on. And they're people on The View are saying, no, don't show up for the Kennedy Center honors. This is the constant theme, right? If you're a Super Bowl winning team, don't show up. If you're this, don't show up. And, it's like and this was Bill Maher's point. It's like, you got to be crazy not to go. If you get invited by the president, go. If you get nominated for something like this, go.
Can you imagine the cognitive dissonance that it takes to go to Gloria Gaynor, a woman whose song literally starts with, first I was afraid, I was petrified, and now I'm not afraid anymore, and screw it, I'm me, and I'm going to stand on my own 2 feet and be like, we're going to bully you into not doing the Kennedy Center honors? Listen to the song. You've missed the point of the song, I think. The whole thing is ridiculous because Trump is going to host it or because Trump's cleaning up the place. Give me a break. First of all, this is meant to be art. So this is meant to be where everything intersects, where we don't have to worry about what side of the aisle that you're on. And Ana Navarro, right? I know you said not to say names, but I can't help it when she said, first of all, hearing her voice is like
Miss Piggy.
Yeah,
let's just call her
nails
Miss
on
Piggy.
A chalkboard. But when she said, oh, it's a stain on the prestige of the awards. And first of all, this is the president of the United States, the most powerful man in the world, elected by a Democratic populace. We get that you don't like him. We get that it wasn't your guy. But you're undermining America as a whole when you do that. And it's disgusting.
I love the fact, leading on from this is the cleanup that Trump is doing at the Smithsonian. He's basically saying, listen, all of the museums for the last few years that have been tearing down statues, and I'm not talking about Robert E. Lee, I'm talking about Christopher Columbus. I mean, George Washington, they were tearing down those statues and sending them to the scrapyard. He's saying, you can't do that. You cannot have a museum that's getting federal funding, that's in our country, that is promoting hatred of our country. You want to show an honest history, good and bad, go for it. And he actually said that, both the good and the bad. Yeah, that's what we want. But we don't want this woke DEI nonsense that seeped into every single organization as well as our museums that is just showing our kids that we are terrible people. What society does that? It's not healing. It's not helping. It is just divisive, and it only helps the Chinese and the Iranians. So I'm really glad that he's doing that.
I actually love this. To me, this is even more important than the Kennedy Center thing, because the idea of trimming that ideological fat and saying America is great. And this, I know this is what MAGA stands for, guys, make America great again. But also, can we actually make America great again? Can it not just be a slogan? Can we say we're proud to be American? Can we say we're proud of our history? I get every country, everyone across the board, and most far worse than ours, has certain things in their past that they would have done differently. Sure. But look at what we were able to accomplish. Look at how many people we were able to pull out of poverty. Look at how we were able to shut down slavery when there's still slavery right now in a lot of the places that a lot of the liberals are out there marching on behalf of currently. I think it's about time that we weed out the, quote, improper ideology and bring back a history that's worth being proud of. And Trump doing that makes me want to stand up and salute. I am so proud of this. It's your word, men, American exceptionalism. This is what we should be celebrating. I love this.
Yeah, part of American exceptionalism, we launched makeamericans.proudagain.org. Makeamericans.proudagain.org. And it highlights American exceptionalism. Anyone who did something amazing that is America, that's what we're focusing on. We don't want to focus on what divides us. We want to focus on what unites us. We want to focus on the amazing things that made this country better than any other country in the world.
What I want to just close this up by saying is what Trump is doing and his administration is doing, especially all the lawyers that are working behind the scenes, is it's a social version of what the criminal version of broken windows. This is the social version of what they were doing with cleaning up the Smithsonian. You clean up these things because the only way to fix it, to get it right at the top, is to clean the crap at the bottom. So from the Smithsonian to the Kennedy Center to everything they're doing and annihilating DEI at its most cellular level will then protect it going forward. I love what they're doing. You got to get the people off the campuses. You got to get the crazies off the campuses. You got to focus on all these social things that are wrong and to actually gain steam for the future. You got to break the universities. You got to break the bureaucracies in Washington, like the Smithsonian, like the Kennedy Center honors were. And I think it's a great start, going.
I absolutely agree. And I think that any evolution throughout history is painful. This is something that we have to acknowledge. Major change is not easy. We have had slow, like we talked about decades ago when the Muslim Brotherhood was caught by the FBI talking about how they wanted to destroy the United States. And when you look at the steps that were laid out on how to do so, how to break down society little by little, that's a slow, like frog sitting in the water, you don't realize the boiling is happening thing. Trump needs to do this much faster because, first of all, he only has one term left, this term that he's in, and who knows what's going to happen in 2 years or in a year and a half now. So we need to move quickly. We don't have time for the slow, decades-long change back to normalcy. And so, yeah, this is going to be some rapid evolution. Rapid evolution means breaking some things and means some pain, but you come out the other side of it cleaner. And I'm going to use his tariffs as the example of this. He said it, and it applies to a lot of the things he's trying to do. You're going to have a little pain up front. Some of those prices might shoot up for a moment, and people are going to get scared, and the stock market might flip around. Be prepared for it. But at the end of the day, we're going to have positive results as long as we are strong enough to get through that difficult period. I think we need to do the same thing across the board.
Well said. And Mend, any final thoughts on that? Or are you good?
No, I love what we're doing. And I love that Trump brushes off all of this rhetoric and the nonsense from morons like the people on MSNBC and The View. And he's doing what needs to be done. And that is like one of the biggest things that you could take away from this stuff. We want him to go after all of the corrupt and the bad people from the past, sure. And they are doing that, and they've got their plate full. Cash and Bondi and all of them have their plate full on that. But Trump's forward looking. He's like, I don't care. He doesn't personally care about going after those people that did the stuff in the past. He gave that to the Justice Department. He goes, do it. And that's actually the way it's supposed to be done. The president should not be directing his Justice Department to go after his political opponents, but they should be going after them because they committed crimes, and nobody's above the law. Nobody's above the law. I love that one.
No, and you're 100% correct. And listen, anybody that listens to this podcast that, and feels like we don't talk about certain things enough, there's a lot of other podcasts that you could listen to where they're constantly talking about going after Comey, Clapper, and the whole cabal. And we're super excited that that's what's going on, but that's just not what we do. There are other people that do it, and there's a lot of different voices that people could listen to. And Golan, I just wanted to say, it's funny because I was talking about Mark Maron, and I there was one takeaway I got from him. He was on Bert Kreischer's show, and he was talking about, his crowd. And I'd like to think that we were trying to build up our crowd. And I like our crowd. I like our truth crowd. I extremely loyal, extremely great people.
You said truth, but I think that, and I love the people on truth. As anyone who is on there knows, we respond to every message that we get, sometimes deep into the night, and we write out essays for you and all the rest. But I think that it's not just that. I think based on the letters that we've been receiving, There are people on both sides of the aisle that are coming to us for their news, for their daily cheat sheet, if you will, because we're coming at these topics with common sense. We're coming at it with compassion, and we're coming at it with stats and logic. You know, as you said on yesterday's show, I think it was, you love doing this because we all really know what we're talking about. We do our research. We try to understand these topics before we start just shooting off our mouths about them. And we try to inform. How many times do we stop the show and go, wait a minute, for the readers to understand, and then we explain something? So all of that is, I think, really important because it means we are not solely speaking to people in our echo chamber. We will disagree on this show. We will go beyond the talking points. And I think it's really important to note that we have people in other countries, people on both sides of the aisle, people who have no opinion and haven't made a decision yet on what they're going to do, the undecideds, true undecideds. I know I've been getting mail from people saying, thank you for helping me to understand these
Like what, a
topics further.
stamp?
Like what now?
Yes, snail mail.
You've
The
been getting
postal
mail
man
with a
shows up,
stamp? I mean,
big
that might,
bag of mail every day.
the thing is, they probably sent it to you a month and a half ago. I mean, we're old news at that point.
So glad my point resonated so much with you, Judah.
No, it did. Listen, I think we're, listen, I don't want to toot our own horn. People do that for us. And I'm so grateful for everybody that, on Truth, everybody is like our associate producers. They're just trying to help us as much as possible. It's so nice and so kind.
On Rumble as well. Rumble, we only got on about 10 or 11 episodes ago, and the comments have been so wonderful.
I got one thing to say before we jump off. I went off on the Canadians the other day, and I just want to clarify. We love Canada. We love our Canadian fans. We have a lot of fans up in Canada. And it's not Canadians as a whole, and it's not Canada as a country that we have an issue with. It's the Liberal Party in Canada and the hypocrites and the absolute morons running most of their cities. There's a guy up in Canada called Mario for the North. This guy is a hero. He's on Instagram. He's on X.
Is he following us?
He does, of course.
Okay, great. That's awesome.
And if you want to get inside info on the hypocrisy and the moronic stuff going on in Canada, talk about redistricting. They redistricted the Polier Voliver, the guy who was running for, butchered his name, but the guy who was running for prime minister who just lost to Carney. What's that?
How could you not mispronounce this?
I know. Anyway, he showed how they redistricted his map to be almost nothing. This guy had a massive province that he was in charge of. They redistricted it on him. Canada is doing what America would have done had Joe Biden or Kamala won a second term. They are chopping it up and they are dividing it in a way that conservatives will never be able to get the upper hand again. It's really sad to see what's going on there. From immigration, open borders, they're inviting in tons of people that are ideologically not compatible with Canada, Canadian values, just like France and the UK did. And this guy is a hero. So if you're looking for somebody to follow, this is your guy. We'll give his name a plug one more time. Mario #4 the North on Instagram and X.
Okay, perfect. And I just want to end with this. A lot of people struggle out there. A lot of people in America struggle with mental illness and addiction. I'll be coming up on a certain amount of time sober on October 1st, specifically 27 years. I'm not saying that other than to help people out there. And when you do a show like this, when we live in a world like we do, it's really difficult sometimes to stay sane, to be happy, and to not get too down. I suffer from depression still, not as bad as I used to, but I still do. And I'm not sharing that. Well, I am sharing that because I know a lot of others feel the same way and have that same malady. And I encourage you to find a group, to find people like us. I am blessed in my life to have you guys, to have a few other friends that walk me off a ledge. I've known Men for over 20 years, and Men knows full well about how I deal with stuff, and I'm able to talk to him on the phone. I'm able to talk to Golan. I'm able to talk to our friend that starts with a J, our friend that starts with an N, our friend that starts with an R. I don't want to say their names because I don't want to break their anonymity, but I have been so blessed. And I was saying to a friend of mine on the phone before, it's so nice that I get to have this inner circle of just amazing people. And I used to, when I was younger, I would just run if I was having an issue, and friends would be dead to me. The friends I have now, the friendships I've built up, the people I love on truth, never want to run from that. And I pray that if you're struggling, get help, reach out. You could DM us on truth with anything. You don't have to be alone and fight this yourself. And I often think when people say, go on, when you read the ending of, and somebody committed suicide, they said, if you're suffering from so-and-so, call. It's like Nancy Reagan, just say no.
Right.
That's not how you frame it. You frame it that there are people out there to reach out to. So if anybody is struggling, I beg of you to please reach out to us. Nothing is too big that we can't handle, and nothing is too big that you can't handle, but you got to reach out for us because it seems too big in that moment.
There was a guy I was in the army with who said life is a fight, and at first I thought, wow, what a terrible way to look at it. You're always tense, you're always in a fight. What I realize is it doesn't necessarily have to be a negative, because it's a whole lot easier when you're not fighting it alone, right? When you see a band of people, it's the old adage about the stick versus the bundle. That's why it's important to find your people, and you don't have to agree with your people on everything. This is something that these days needs to be said, because I know people who are like, I love everything about them, but they had this one thing and they were dead to me. I never spoke to them again. You just want to have the same kind of future, right? A safe future, a free future, a strong future where your kids are protected, where your dreams are possible. Find those people. And if you have that, you're not just surviving, you're thriving. Consider us amongst them.
Well said. And on that note, love you both. You can find us on Apple. You can find us on Spotify. As Golan just brought up, you could find us on Rumble now at the Daily Cheat Sheet. And if anything happens with Russia that's interesting to talk about, or we just want to go live for a few minutes, we will test that out. We will beta test ourselves on Rumble. YouTube, you could find us at the Daily Cheat Sheet. Instagram at the Daily Cheat Sheet. Truth at the Daily Cheat Sheet. Only place you can't find us at the Daily Cheat Sheet is X, where we're at TD Cheat Sheet. And Substack is great. Daily Cheat Sheet. Share your thoughts, share your opinions with us. I want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and night world. Wherever you are, God bless you all.